Brazil's government deploys the armed forces to the Amazon after weeks of inaction. And Rohingya refugees commemorate the second anniversary of their escape from Myanmar. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. President Evo Morales of Bolivia has announced that he and his vice president will suspend their presidential campaign for the time being, in order to focus all efforts into putting out the wildfires.
After reflecting with our ministers and our vice president since early this morning, we got together with authorities from Cochabamba and decided we will suspend our election campaign for at least a week. Evo Morales and Álvaro García Linera will suspend our campaign, and we will dedicate our efforts to taking care of the entire Chiquitania region and the entire Bolivian Amazon.
During his speech, the president added that he welcomes all international aid in the fight against wildfires. Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, has more.
Over the past few hours, and despite all efforts to control fires in the Santa Cruz department, new hotspots have gained strength. As such, the Bolivian government has said that all international aid to put out the fire is welcome. President Evo Morales announced that a number of regional governments have offered their help, and that the CAF, Development Bank of Latin America, has donated $500,000. The president also spoke about the reports from the regions in danger that say that fires started to spread last Wednesday, while adding that the Foreign Ministry received an offer from the French government to cooperate in the protection of biodiversity. Finally, Morales lamented the fact that due to the alleged ideological reasons, some member states of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization have rejected holding a summit to discuss short-term plans to deal with fires in the Amazon.
President Morales had earlier called for an emergency meeting of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization to discuss a solution to the wildfires ravaging the Amazon. He also said he's instructed that a budget be prepared in order to purchase a supertanker. The 747, which is being used to fight the fires currently, is being leased.
I'm calling on all of the countries that are members of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. I am calling for an emergency and urgent meeting of the foreign ministers to discuss not only how to confront this, but how to better prepare ourselves in the future on how to take care of our Amazon, our biodiversity. I have instructed the Minister of Defense to prepare a budget, especially the members of the Bolivian Air Force, and to work on a project aimed at obtaining our own supertanker and not keeping leasing it, as we have been doing to date. Thanks to our economic growth, we can continue equipping ourselves in order to offer better services to the Bolivian people.
With now more than 20 days since the wildfires began devastating Brazil's Amazon region, the far-right government has deployed military planes and troops to the state of Rondonia to put out the raging fires. The military is using two C-130 Hercules planes, which can dump over 3,000 gallons of water on the blazes. Just days ago, President Jair Bolsonaro made claims that the fires were being started by environmental activists and that the country lacked the resources to put them out. The Xingu Network, an articulation of indigenous peoples, traditional peoples, and allied organizations, released this video from the front lines of the defense of the Amazon.
Estamos na aldeia Cubencacre, terra indígena Meclonotira, sul do Pará. Enquanto o mundo reza para a Amazônia, com medo do que pode acontecer no futuro, nós nos reunimos, todos os povos do Xingu juntos. Queremos dizer que vamos seguir resistindo pela floresta, pelo nosso modo de vida, para produzir sem destruir, pelo futuro dos nossos filhos e netos, pela saúde do planeta. Por isso dizemos não ao garimpo em nossas terras, não ao desmatamento. Chega de invasões e desrespeito, chega de veneno em nossos rios e alimentos, chega de queimadas criminosas. Nós aqui no Xingu estamos conectados com você. todos em defesa da Amazônia. Nós estamos na linha de frente e precisamos do seu apoio. Lute ao nosso lado.
Our correspondent Brian Muir has just arrived in Brazil's Amazon and brings us the latest.
I'm standing in Porto Velho, which is the capital of the Brazilian state of Rondonia. It used to be covered in virgin rainforest. Now it's mostly been ripped down and taken over by the beef industry, by agribusiness. And this all started in the late 1970s due to a project financed by the World Bank, which convinced the military dictatorship that it was actually good for the Brazilian economy to rip down rainforest. And so the government, with World Bank funding, moved thousands of ranchers into the state. They took over the political apparatus, and now it's the Amazon state with one of the least amounts of remaining forest. But on the other side of the Madeira River, behind me, which is engulfed in smoke from burning fires, lies the state of Amazonas. Amazonas, last year still had 98% virgin forest cover on it. But that's beginning to change because of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro. Loggers are moving in, soy ranchers are moving in, and now there's a part of the southern state across the river from us that's called the Band of Fire, where fires are burning out of control right now. And in the coming days, we're going to go there and film and show you what it looks like.
Wildfires have also reached the Peruvian Amazon. About 2,700 hectares of rainforest have already been consumed in the Madre de Dios department. The regional governor has since asked the government to declare the blaze an environmental emergency.
We are not prepared. And we are not prepared because we do not have the personnel and not even the equipment to fight forest fires. This is very worrying because look at the devastation in Brazil and Bolivia. We don't want to think that this could spread and happen here in our region.
In Venezuela, a new act of sabotage was carried out on Saturday evening as an explosion took place at the Jefa Apacuana gas filling plant in Tomaslan, their municipality of Miranda State. Oil Minister Manuel Quevedo tweeted that the fire was immediately controlled by firefighters, civil protection, Bolivarian armed forces, national militia, and police bodies. Luis Vasquez, a worker of the Daniel Gas Company, suffered burns to his body as a result of the explosion. He was evacuated and treated at a medical center in Valles de Tuy. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez said that it was a terrorist plan of the imperial right. Another social leader has been killed in Colombia. Danilo Olaya Perdomo was president of the Vereda Alta Cachaya Community Action Board in the municipality of Gigante. The community is asking that the case be investigated. He was shot and killed on Saturday night as he arrived to his rural home. Environmental activists in Honduras have been sued by the Inversions Pinares mining company. The activists say that this state-backed persecution for opposing the construction of a mine that would destroy their land. Let's find out more.
After mining company Inversiones Pinares, who stands accused of damaging private property, sued environmental activists. The activists went to the courts to condemn the charges against them and to warn of attempts on their lives.
Justice in this country is manipulated by the government, by transnational companies, and by organized crime. We don't want to be hunted like animals, because the mining company is using their hitmen to execute us.
Lawyers for the activists assure that members of the Huapinol community haven't committed any crime, and that's why they went to court. But once there, they were ignored, as authorities simply gave them numerous baseless excuses.
The public ministry has sued 32 people from Huanipol for opposing a mining project that contaminates the rivers, which is the only source of water they have. They are being sued for defending the river, life, and the environment. The persecutor has claimed that these people are felons.
Over 10 years ago, the indigenous and Garifunas communities are being criminalized for opposing the expropriation of their lands, which are then given to hydroelectric and mining projects, without any sort of dialogues or consultation with inhabitants.
Which are the territories and resources they're handing over? They belong to the indigenous people, to our communities, because they are our lands and we have lived in peace with nature. They say that we are against development because we oppose the destruction of forests, because we oppose mining.
While the activists try to make themselves heard, The Special Rapporteur of the United Nations, Diego Sayan, pointed out mistakes found in the implementation of the criminal justice system during his visit to Honduras.
When you talk about judges' independence, we're not talking about the right of judges to resolve cases according to the law and their own judgment, but of the right of the people, of the population, of having a justice system that provides solutions according to the law when they are involved in a case.
The activists will now have to wait for a judge to hear their case, but not before being arrested despite their apparent innocence.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. The local administration of Srinagar in Indian-administered Kashmir has taken down the flag of Jammu and Kashmir from the Secretariat building. This comes weeks after India's nationalist government stripped Jammu and Kashmir of the semi-autonomous status. Under the earlier provision, Kashmir was allowed to have a separate flag and its own constitution. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Muzaffarabad in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, demanding an end to the lockdown imposed by India, as it enters its 20th day. Security forces are on high alert in the main city of Srinagar, while communication continues to be down and movement is for the most part restricted.
Don't be confused. By entering Kashmir, India did not finish with its agenda. India can also attack Azad Kashmir. An attack on Azad Kashmir will be a declaration of war.
This is a bloodline. They call it a line of control. We call it the line of blood. We will desiccate it under our feet, and like the Berlin Wall, we will demolish it.
Authorities in Libya have temporarily suspended flights in Tripoli's only functioning airport. According to officials, the decision was made after a rocket hit the airport just as two flights were landing, each carrying over 200 passengers. The Midiga International Airport has been targeted since fighting began between the Government of National Accord and forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar.
I was surprised by a strong explosive sound. All security immediately told us to go outside for safety. They said all flights were cancelled. I said okay, thinking that the explosion was far away, in a different area. I was surprised to find that the missile had hit and damaged my car. It completely destroyed my car and completely destroyed all of the other cars around it.
Protesters gathered in Angola's capital, Luanda, to demonstrate against high unemployment rates. Several civil organizations called for the protests to denounce the failure of the government to create 500,000 jobs as it had promised in 2017. But security forces were deployed to prevent protesters from reaching the provincial government square. Tunisia's election commission says presidential candidate Nabil Karoui, who was arrested on Friday, will remain in the running for the next month's election. Naroui, a Tunisian media mogul, was arrested on charges of money laundering and tax evasion. He's one of 26 candidates contesting the presidential election following the death of former President Essebsi last month. Kenya has added intersex to the gender options for the ongoing census of its population. With this new option, authorities will determine the number of citizens who do not identify as either male or female. Intersex people in the country have often faced violence and discrimination, which prevented them from finding work or owning property. With this decision, Kenya becomes the first African state to include intersex gender option in an official survey.
Since intersex people are now being included, I have a feeling it will help us because now we won't be disturbed and we'll also get help just as other normal persons and even work together with them.
Now to the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados have signed a memorandum of understanding for cooperation on energy development from hydrocarbons. That memorandum will likely lead to an agreement. Leading the Trinidadian delegation was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, who was accompanied by his Energy Minister and his Foreign Minister, Dennis Moses. On the Barbados side was Energy Minister Wilfred Abrams and Environmental Minister Trevor Prescott.
The document that was signed this morning is a memorandum of understanding between the government of Barbados and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a non-binding document, but it's a commitment to cooperate in energy exploration in the offshore of our respective territories. As you may know, Trinidad and Tobago has a long history in the search for and the production of hydrocarbon products.
This morning is about securing the future of our two nations. And I look forward, therefore, to that deeper cooperation. I look forward to the human interaction continuing at all levels, both at the policy level, but also in the technical fields for our citizens. And I look forward generally to us recognizing that this is but one of the cooperation agreements, Prime Minister, that we will embark upon.
Prime Minister Motley also stressed the value of seeking cooperation with not only CARICOM countries, but nations of Africa and Asia as well.
I know that you and I have already had preliminary conversations about deeper diplomatic cooperation, especially in the continent of Africa and in Asia, where for us, our countries as CARICOM countries have recognized that we can no longer live in a world that is driven by the North Atlantic perspective alone, and that in embracing the world, that there is sense in cooperation, and that it makes no sense us all trying to do the same thing thousands of miles from here when we can work collaboratively, and when 90% of the time the interests at that level are the same.
The Guinness World Record for the largest gathering of Mexican folk dancers has been broken at the International Festival of Mariachi and Charro in Guadalajara. 882 participants danced in unison to break the previous record of 457 folk dancers set in 2011. The International Mariachi and Charro Festival is held every year to celebrate Mexican culture, in particular dance and music. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Protests continue in Hong Kong, but many residents are fed up with vandalism and destruction. Violent protesters have been accused of vandalizing public property, committing arson, hurling suspected petrol bombs, and attacking police officers with bricks. A spokesperson of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region says that this is jeopardizing the safety of members of the public and law enforcement.
I don't agree with their acts, and I think they have gone too far. They should consider the rights of others, consider whether they have complied with the law or whether they have damaged public property and facilities, as they all come from taxpayers' money. Why did they destroy these lampposts?
Close to 200,000 Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh gathered to mark the second anniversary of their exodus from Myanmar. On August 25, 2017, over 700,000 Rohingya began fleeing Myanmar for Bangladesh after armed forces launched a violent crackdown against the Muslim minority. During Sunday's rally, the refugees demanded that Myanmar restore their citizenship and other rights before they agreed to return. Some carried placards and banners reading "Never Again," Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day, and "Restore Our Citizenship."
We demand full citizenship with the Rohingya ethnicity, return of our own house compounds and land, and our securities on the ground. These are our last demands.
Burma government violated our human rights and national citizenship rights and all our properties and drive out.
The Syrian town of Marek in the northern part of Hama Governorate is now under the control of the Syrian Arab Army, according to the Syrian Arab News Agency. The advances come as the SAA also recaptured the town of Khan Sheikhoun on Thursday. They say that the highway from Marek to Shan Sheikhoun city is under full control and that mines and explosives have been dismantled.
The towns of Latamne, Kravzeit, and Morek were recaptured. All of them became totally safe cities free of armed terrorists. These areas and posts of the Syrian Arab Army were deployed under instructions and orders from the general leadership of the army and armed forces.
Protests continue in France in response to the gathering of the G7 leaders at the summit, which officially began yesterday. Activists marched in protest in the streets of Bayonne against the environmental policies of President Emmanuel Macron. They're demanding that policy action be taken to lower France's carbon footprints. In Turkey, women protesters gathered in Istanbul to demonstrate against domestic violence. Protesters are also calling on the government to take legal action on cases of gender-based violence. This is the latest protest in a series of demonstrations which were triggered by the deadly stabbing of Emine Bulut by her ex-husband in a cafe on August 18th. A video of her death spread on social media, causing widespread outrage.
Today is not only about a recent murder. This is about a general problem for women in Turkey. Violence is everywhere. In order for this to stop, some legal action should be taken. Istanbul law should come into effect, for instance. We are not entrusted to anybody. We have not been entrusted to anybody but ourselves. That mentality should change. Policies of states should change. The murders of women are political, so politics should change.
7 people, including 2 minors, have been killed after a mid-air collision between a helicopter and a small plane in Mallorca, Spain. The wreckage from both aircrafts crashed into a field where emergency services, the Civil Guard, and local police have been mobilized. The cause of the accident has not yet been established. West Indian culture is being celebrated at the Notting Hill Carnival in West London. Celebrations including dancing and performances of traditional reggae, merengue, calypso, and zouk, while vendors bring out Caribbean cuisine. Alongside the festivities, event-goers paused at 3 p.m. for a 72-second moment of silence to remember the victims and survivors of the Grenfell Tower fire. And we leave you with the sounds of drums of solidarity from Kenya. the Haile Selassie Foundation expresses its solidarity with the people of Venezuela.